Hey guys, so today's episode is sponsored by Baja Gold Co. It's one of my personal favorite salts. And Baja Gold is the world's most flavorful sea salt with naturally lower sodium and industry leading macro and trace minerals to support daily performance. Mamas, I can help you improve your family's health with my 5-week online course, Real Food, Real Families. It even has 5 weeks worth of meal plans. So check out nourishthelittles.com and use the code NTL10 for 10% off. Welcome back to Modern Ancestral Mamas. Thank you for being here with us wherever you're listening from. As a reminder, if you enjoy our show, don't forget to share this episode with your friends and your family. Please hit the subscribe button and give us a rating or a comment or a compliment. And yeah, we love reading them. Okay, so today we're sitting down with another fellow mama to talk all about homesteading, trout farming. Yes, you heard that right. And raising littles. So let's welcome Shannon Wagner, known as the Trout Wife.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
All right, so I'm going to read a little short bio, but I have to just tell you guys, before we just hit record, Shannon and I realized that we are from the same town and that our mothers went to the same high school. So this is very fun. All right, so Shannon is known as the Trout Wife, wife to Ty Walker, owner and operator of Smoke in the Chimneys Regenerative Trout Hatchery. Guys, it's going to be one of those nights. She's a mom to 3 beautiful kids with one on the way, and they have a homestead. They have been homesteading for the past 8 years. Shannon is devoted to WAPF and GAPS nutrition and building a simple lifestyle. She is known for being a realist, especially about homeschooling and motherhood, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thank you for coming on the show, Shannon.
Thanks.
Your line about, or the line about being a realist is my favorite, because I think that with everything that goes on with social media, it's so easy to fall into the trap of perfection and thinking people have it all together and nobody has it all together. And the more that we can be realists about it, the better off I think other people are. I think we are, because we're not trying to hide behind anything. All those things. So
When I read that in the bio, I was like, oh, Corey's going to love that part.
Yeah, it's just kind of my personality. I love writing, and I started writing when my mom passed away, and it was just like, it was a therapy for me to just be really, really real about like everything that was happening and all of my emotions. And so I just realized that not only does it help me stay grounded, but so many people connect with it, and it helps people feel seen. And I feel like, especially with homesteading and just the health food scene, like, we are idealistic people. Like, we're striving for something that is amazing, but sometimes we can get caught up in being idealistic and not actually being realistic, and it starts to eat us alive, to put it lightly.
Pun intended, I'm guessing.
Yeah, right.
I find that one of the flaws of the holistic movement is fantasizing the past and like fantasizing the way things used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely something that, like you said, we have to be very real about. While there might have been some aspects of our pre-modern life that were great and kept us healthy, there were also very harsh realities that many people had to face. So
my kids and I were literally just
agree.
reading about the Black Death the other day, and I was like, this is the kind of thing, like, this is bad news. We have to stop. I agree. We have to stop romanticizing the past. Like,
It also is just so completely different. Like, it's like when Mary Ruddick came on and talked about her Indigenous people. Like, I had a friend call me, say, I just want to move there and live among them. And I'm just like, there are things that we can take from what she's talking about that are really, really amazing. But we have to be realistic about like our lives and what can we incorporate where it works and it doesn't actually increase our stress? It decreases our stress. So yeah, it's a dance for sure, and you have to figure it out. It's very humbling.
Yeah, I agree. Should we jump into the question, Corey?
Yeah. Do you want to ask yours or do you want to ask mine?
No,
We
I kind
both
of.
wrote questions for today,
I
and I
know.
think Christine's is cuter.
Oh, I was about to say I actually kind of like yours.
Oh, thanks. Okay. All right, I'll do it then since I usually ask the question.
Yeah.
All right. So, since we usually start the show with a question, here's our question for today, folks. Fill in the blank. Fish is
Should we do it on the count of
Delicious.
three? Oh, I know, right? I agree. Delectable.
Amazing.
not my favorite food.
Corey,
Twist on the question.
I thought you were going to say disgusting.
I'm not going to say that because that's not a nice word to use. And actually, like, I'm always trying to tell my kids we don't say that about food. We can say it's not my favorite.
Right.
Have you ever had our trout?
No, girl. If it
You
is
gotta have
at,
our trout. We have had so many people, especially when we were at the farmers markets and we were like seeing every single person face to face. And farmers markets alone are just so they're like a whole life experience in and of themselves, because you have people, you've worked so hard for this product, and then you have people come up and they're like, ooh, I am not going to eat that head. Ooh, I can't even look at that. Ooh, I hate fish. Like, and they just feel the need to tell you that while you're standing there having woken up at 5:30 in the morning, set up your, you know what I'm saying? But we've had so many people say they don't like fish, or say they don't like trout, or say that they're even allergic to fish. And they will buy our fish and eat it. And they come back and they're like, I loved it. Like, that was unbelievable. And side note to that is the other day, our fish just got added into a box of really sought after farmed fish. It's called Seatopia. And so you can buy, do you know them, Christine?
No, but I am writing this down.
Okay, so Seatopia is this company that basically searches out and tests, like meticulously tests thousands of dollars into each seafood product, tests their product, and then, but it's all from farms. So they make sure that it's farmed really well, kind of like we do with all of our meats and our vegetables and stuff. And a really like, this guy has like, I guess he has like 500,000 followers on Instagram. Of course, I can't remember his name, but he's been buying from them for years. He bought the box that had our trout, doesn't know Thai from Adam, doesn't know smoking chimneys from Adam. And he said it was his favorite thing in the box that he's ever had. And I said to Ty, I said, do you really think our fish is that good? And I'm like, is it really that good? Like, I just am like amazed. Every time I'm just amazed. You know, we know we're doing it the right way, but when you just do something the right way and it just creates this amazing thing, you're almost like, I don't know what to attribute this to, you know, like it's just nature taking its course, like, and creating something beautiful. So anyway, Ty goes, I think it is that good, but I also think most seafood is just that bad. And I was like, wow, that's a serious statement, because I think it's true. I think it's true. Like, most of what we come into contact with, just like the average person that's going to the grocery store and buying meat at the grocery store, you know, they get a pig that maybe lived outside but didn't have that much grass, had some pretty good feed, you know, and wasn't that pork that was sent to the butcher and then locally grown, maybe it wasn't perfectly done, to the average person tastes like a whole nother world, you know? Yeah. And then it just gets better from there, the better you raise that pig. So anyway, it's very cool. It's a very cool experience for sure, but it's definitely, you should try our fish. That was all to say that.
No, I would love to. I actually have been on a quest to try and like fish. And, you know, like, I'm from the East Coast. This is something that I should really like. And now we even live closer to the coast. Like we live 30 minutes from the ocean. Like this should be something that is part of my regular. I've joked about it before on this show. Like well, obviously Shannon, you would know this too, but like when you grow up in Maryland, you grow up with crab crab feast
Mhm.
just being a thing that you
Yes.
do. And it's a whole social event and everybody sits around the table.
Mhm.
A lot like a low country boil if you're from the South, where you just have like newspaper on the table and you're sitting
Mhm.
there picking crabs, and I can pick crabs all day,
Mhm.
but I don't like to eat them.
Oh,
like,
wow. Oh my gosh.
like I will sit there and pick them, but
Not
I don't
even
want to
dipped
eat
in
them.
melted butter. Oh,
No.
I
my
know,
favorite.
right? It's literally my favorite food. This is why I think Corey and I make such a funny pair.
Yeah.
Oh,
When I was a
funny.
kid, I remember I called it the crab mustard. You know what I'm
Yep.
talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking
And
about.
I
They
literally
call it
didn't know it was the
tamale.
guts. I did not know it was the guts until I was older. And I was like, oh, that's disgusting. But it's just so good. Like, why? I don't know. It's just crazy. So, but yeah, crabs are, that's a hard one to beat. And you don't like that. That would be tough.
I know. Shame on
Um,
me.
so I mean, I know we're going to talk about this, but I am so curious to try your fish. My son's favorite tinned fish is actually a rainbow trout.
Oh,
We get it from, I mean, we get it from Whole Foods. I only get it every once in a while because it's literally like $7 for one
mhm.
can. And I don't even think one can is enough of a serving for a growing kid.
Yeah.
But he's obsessed with it. And so now I'm really wondering if yours is similar, or how it's packaged. I don't even know. Can't wait to
Well,
talk more
So,
about
let's talk
this.
about it. Yeah.
yeah, ours is in like a circle can. And essentially, what Ty did is he took like a 6-inch fish and cut the head off and then, slid the guts out with his thumb. So it's like a sardine, which is great because all the bones are just like cooked into the fish. So it's really nutritious. It has the tail on it and the fin. Um, but they're in olive oil and then they've been seasoned with a little bit of our summertime seasoning mix. We did mixes like a couple years ago and we do a lot of different things with them, but it's really good. It's very, how do I say this? Like, it's just satiating. Some people might add a little bit more salt. Some people might like it the way that it is. That's kind of a hard thing to figure out, when you do a tin trout. But this was the first time we've ever done it, and I think Ty would like to do fillets after that, or something just more of like, the side piece of a fish. But I think the sardine style is like a novelty, and a lot of the chefs that we've brought it to have been really, really excited. We did our first release at the Dabney in DC.
Mm-hmm.
I think last year they were named the best restaurant in DC, and they're wonderful there. And so they partnered with us to do our first release, and he served it on like kind of a long, dense crostini that was still soft in the middle, almost like a piece of sourdough bread, really, like if you had artisanal sourdough bread. And then he made a fig kind of jam that went with it. And then he put a little bit more seasoning on it. And it was my favorite thing on the menu. Like, it was so, so good. So I think if you can think about it like a charcuterie item, or like we used to eat, before we came out with our own tin fish, we would eat a lot of herring, and I would salt and pepper it and put it on a cracker with some cheese, or we would just eat cheese with it, or a pork rind or something like that. So I think the tin fish with something crunchy it's just amazing.
Now, are you saying that you cook it before putting it in the tin? How
So
does that work?
no, so it's kind of like when you pressure can something, it's cooked when it's canned. But I think in the future we would like to do our smoked. So that will be a little bit more dicey because he'll brine it and then do like more of a cold smoke to get that smoke flavor into it. Because every smoked fish that we sell is truly smoked. Like, we do not use liquid anything It's all like smoked on a true big smoker with usually apple wood. And so, yeah, so that would be another thing we did a demo with that, but because he did his original smoking recipe, which does cook the fish, once he canned it, it was too soft. So like you just have to go through so much with stuff like this. When you get through like working with trying to figure out a good product and getting it right, like there's so much trial and error. And so I'm really proud of Ty to figure this out and have his first run be so delicious and for the chefs to be so happy with it. So, yeah.
So does it have bones in it like a sardine? So I'm thinking the sardine bones, they crumble in your fingers. They're really soft and like they're not really an issue. I mean, I feel like for people that are hesitant about fish, more than anything, you see them and you get grossed out. But then once you start eating it, you don't really taste it at all.
Yeah.
So
You
how
mean
does
the
that work
bones?
with
You don't taste the bones?
Yeah,
So
sorry. Yeah, the
yeah,
bones.
I was telling you guys, I'm like a picky bone person, and I grew up picking crabs, and you were picking out every teeny little piece, making your little pile or whatever. And I'm the same with trout. Like I am so picky about the bones. I don't want any bone. I will pick through it until it's in teeny little shreds so that I can eat and have no, fear of swallowing a bone. But the tin fish is amazing because you literally just eat it. It's like you're literally picking up a trout, like the second half of a 6-inch trout, and you just eat it, and like there's nothing. They've been cooked out. They're so skinny and so small that in that pressure canning process, they pretty much disappear. But it's great because you get the nutrition from it, in the
Right.
fish. So,
So you get the massive amounts of calcium from eating those bones. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the nutrition of the trout if you knew it by any chance.
I know a little bit. I tried to write kind of, so we did some comparables a couple years ago just with salmon and stuff. And trout is really comparable to salmon. The only difference is that I think because salmon is so much bigger, they just have more fat. So their protein is pretty much the same. Trout is actually a little bit higher in protein and just a little bit lower in fat. But in terms of nutrition, it's exactly the same as a salmon. And like I said, a trout is like the size of your forearm, to your fingertips, whereas a salmon is massive. So, and they are growing for so much longer, and so that's how they acquire all that fat. So with a trout, if you're getting a larger trout, like a 2-pound fish or a 2.5-pound fish, that fish is going to be pink like a salmon, and it's going to have so much more fat, more similar to a salmon. So, but nutritionally, in terms of like your vitamins and stuff, they're pretty much the same.
I'm asking so many questions. I'm sorry, Corey.
No, go ahead.
I was also wondering, are you guys going to be at the conference at all in the fall? Will you have a table? Can I buy a trout from you there?
So, I was just talking to Corey about this. Hopefully it's in the works to potentially serve our trout at the Weston Price Conference. I don't know if that should go on air or not, but yeah, they are very serious about Sally actually tried our trout cakes. She loved them. She tried our trout and loved it. What we're doing is working on the mayonnaise. So we're working with actually the person who processes all of Whole Foods crab cakes does our trout cakes. And so we send him all of our picked smoked meat, and then he makes a very simple, like there's no grain, no filler in our trout cakes. It's like such an amazing recipe. But we're working on switching out the mayonnaise potentially for that. And
Because they
so
use whatever mayonnaise they use has probably nasty
it's
oils and stuff in it.
probably, yeah, nasty oils, which I'm like, oh, I just love Weston Price. They're like down to every single detail. So, anyway, so if that works out, I think I will definitely be there. Ty is doing his release dates all across the country. He'll be in Seattle and LA and New York and Boston through October. So one of those trips is that weekend, but he's like, you have to go, you have to rep us. So I would love to be there and have a table for sure.
Are you guys going to come down south at all?
What do you mean?
Like, are you, because you said he's going to be all over the country.
Okay. So for the trout release, so he partnered with Filson, um, the Filson stores, which is just a crazy story. They were like the first people that ever did an article on us. And Ty's family has actually been working with, or not working, buying their clothes for 3 generations and has loved Filson forever. So that was like a big thing for us. It's like a personal thing kind of. And we love them. And, they're into fly fishing and all that stuff. So he's doing it at the Filson stores. So I don't know if Filson has like a store in the South. Yeah. So.
There's Bass Pro Shop.
Right. Kind of
I've
a
never heard
different
of
feel.
Filson. I don't know.
You
Yeah,
should
I
look
know.
it
I
up.
have to get one too.
They don't really have very much women's stuff, but their stuff is amazing overall.
Cool. Okay. Do we want to, let's talk more about, I want to switch over to homesteading, and then we'll get back to fish in a little bit, because
Okay.
I really am curious about your homesteading journey. Because, I mean, I'm especially curious knowing that we grew up in the same town. Like, this is blowing my mind. Because like, it's like it's a city. Like, it's not even a town. It's a bleed out of Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, yeah, I don't know. I can't, that's all I can describe it as. It's just very much of a city. And especially where you were telling me you is like the really nice part of the city.
That was by accident.
But it's not like there's not, it used to be a farm town. Like, it used to be.
Yeah.
It is not, it was not when I was a kid, not really. So I'm so curious. How did you get to, because you're in Virginia now, right?
Yeah. So I'll tell you kind of the long and short of our story. So growing up in Kentlands, Gaithersburg, Maryland, I just was like, I loved the safety. I loved being able to run, any time of the day. I loved being able to walk to the park, to the pool, all of those things. But I just felt like everyone was in a bubble. And I just felt like it was just it was not real life, and so I was definitely wanting to leave. As soon as I was probably in middle school, I was like, I just want to get out of here. You're trying to like branch out. And so it's funny. I think a lot of my friends would probably look at me and be like, oh, yeah, I'm not surprised. Shannon went in a crazy direction. But I went to JMU and I met Ty at JMU. He was a senior. I was a freshman. And at that point, I knew that I was studying English. I just loved being outside. I've always had a passion for animals. My mom would tell me, you need to be a vet and an artist, and you can draw people's animals. Like, your moms think of these things to make you the happiest person. So I would say, I think she would be pretty proud of me now, knowing that I'm into farming, because it's all of the above, So anyway, Ty was raised on a 300-acre farm, and but he was also a DJ. And I was like, wow, this guy, And so it was the best of both worlds. So after I graduated college, I moved out to LA, and he had been there for 4 years doing DJing and property management. His brother was a dancer. And we stayed there for about 6 months, and we kind of just decided, this is not really where we want to be long term. And so after we got married, we literally took our honeymoon for a week and then drove straight to Oregon and spent 10 months in a farm intensive. We lived in a teeny little cabin with no running water. And, we were a quarter mile from the main house. And it was a multifaceted livestock farm that we just did this internship on. And we got paid a stipend of like $200 a month. And we,
I've had jobs like that.
went fly fishing and, made great memories and some bad habits, and just we're learning about each other and being married the first year. So I think because we survived that, we have a pretty good chance of like long term. But after we left there, we moved back to Ty's family land, and because no one was farming it at the time, they had just leased it out to actually a soybean farmer. And we decided to just completely rehab the land. So we did that for 3 years. We did so much work there. We put in worm season grasses on like, I think 75 acres. We logged the back to build up brush to bring maybe Ty's dream of quail to come back to the farm. And then we put in 2 ponds. We put in a fencing project. We cleaned out all the shelters and stuff. So that's where we really homesteaded, but we got pregnant like immediately. And that was not our plan, but it of course was a blessing. God really perfects you and sanctifies you in the fire. You need that fire. So that's what we were in. We were in the fire. So anyway, we farmed there for 3 years, and we were just living on the land, working the land, and he was doing some real estate. We had some Airbnbs and stuff like that. And then this property came up, and this guy called Ty and said, hey, there's this trout stream, and I know you love fly fishing. And I just looked at him and I was like, absolutely not. I was like, no. I'm like, it's an hour and a half away. You're just going to fly fish all the time. I'm never going to see you. Like, we're not buying this piece of land. And so he goes, let me just look at it. So he went and looked at it, and he came back and he said, Shannon, there's a 3-bedroom house there. And at the time, it just wasn't working out on the family land. Like our housing wasn't working out. We had it was full of black mold, and nobody was really ready for us to like build there or, really put our roots down there. So that was a hard goodbye. But as soon as we moved on to the trout hatchery, it was like things just opened up for us in so many different ways. And so the first year, I think Ty just cleaned the place up, which was a lot of work. It had not been used in a while, and it had just gotten totally overgrown. The house was kind of a mess. And then after that, I think we raised maybe 2,500 fish, which is very small. That's like getting like 1 pig, It's like super small. So we kind of figured out, okay, this is, how you raise fish a little bit. And then the next year I think we got 25,000 the next year. And a lot of them died with super steep learning curve, because you're working with oxygen. You're not working with grass. I tell people this all the time. Like, if you have a cow in a field with no grass, that cow's still going to live. It'll die a slow, painful death, or maybe it won't have a great immune system, or maybe, when it calves, it won't do very well because it doesn't have great nutrition, but it's not going to die because it still has air. And with a fish, if you don't have water, it's dead, like instantly. So it was super hard figuring that equation out. But yeah, now we're here 3 years later into the business. He spent a year just trying to get regulations worked out and getting the fish processed and stuff. And 3 years in now. So it's been a wild ride.
I really want to go into what trout farming is.
Yeah, what does it mean? What does trout farming mean?
Yes.
Let's start with that.
Okay, so you can apply it like we do, with pigs or cows or chickens or whatever. So essentially you're getting eggs in, and kind of like you would buy, I guess you could buy eggs like chicks, and then you incubate them. That's kind of what we do. And so, and Ty also does breed his own trout. It's just, you get so much less, for our production, we need to also buy in eggs. So, anyway, We buy in the eggs, and then there's a process where we kind of slowly wait for them to hatch. They need to eat up their sack. And then after they're kind of hungry for a few days and they've really cleaned up and eaten their whole sack, we'll feed them beef liver. And so, and then you're kind of slowly growing them on really good feed and moving them from more protected areas to less protected areas as they're larger. By the time they're about 6 inches, they'll be in a pond, and then they'll stay in that pond the rest of their life until they're harvested. And sometimes when you harvest fish, you'll move a large portion of them into a raceway, so it's easier to harvest in a short period of time. But Ty's figured out a really great way to harvest them right out of the pond, where he just lowers a net down, fills the net. It's like connected to a boom truck. I don't know what, I'm not saying it right. But so he'll just kind of scoop the fish into the net and then lift them up and put them in a cooler. And we used to try to end their life quickly by, this sounds kind of gruesome, but like you just knock them on the head. Any fisherman, fisherwoman out there knows that trick. But it really damages the meat. And it creates like a bruise, right there that bleeds into the flesh. And so there's that. And then also just figuring out the regulations, trying to do it the way that the state wants us to do it. We kind of put them in the cooler and put them on ice so that that death is very quick and painless as possible. And then they go to the shop to get processed.
So they're outside the whole time, right?
Yes. So when they're eggs to like a fry, they're in a hatchery building. So an egg really cannot see sunlight. It's kind of like in Finding Nemo, where it's like underneath the rock. It's got to be, but you need the swaying of the water. Like that's all super important. A still egg will die. It's got to be in a bubbler where there's oxygen and, pushing them around. But it needs to be dark. And then also like everything wants to eat a fish. It's like a chicken. If you've had chickens, everything wants to eat a chicken. With fish, it's the same. Everything wants to eat a fish. And the worst part is it's not just like, with chickens, you have like a hawk and an owl. With fish, you have like hawks, owls, blackbirds, kingfishers, herons, osprey, eagles, like literally bald eagles on our property fighting over fish. Like it's crazy. So, but our dog does a really good job of that. Raccoons, otters will eat fish, throw them up, and then eat more. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. And of course, that's all like in the night. So the best thing that we've done is our dog. She's amazing. She killed a raccoon the other night, actually, which was great. So, but
Is
yeah.
it the same as a farm dog, like a Pyrenees?
That's what we use. Yeah. Okay. So she doesn't realize that she's guarding the fish. If she gets super hungry for some reason, or there's like a fish out, she'll eat it. If it's like accidentally thrown out of the water or whatever. But she just guards our property, and that works well for us. So yeah, she doesn't see the herons and the eagles though, so that's a little bit harder. But if people are on the property and walking around, usually they'll just fly away.
Interesting. So I feel like there's this negativity surrounding the term farmed fish. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like from what you're saying, in your particular case, you're doing everything right. You're really concerned about what you're feeding the fish and making sure that they're harvested in the best way possible. Mm-hmm. What do you happen to know anything about the term farmed fish and like what that means conventionally, maybe?
Yeah. So I just want to say first, it's just so interesting. I really welcome the criticism just because I feel like it's an opportunity to educate people. But we've had so much, not that you're criticizing, but we've had so much criticism because I think people don't know. We have these really blanket conclusatory statements and we don't have any details. And so it's easy to just say, this is bad.
I just want to say really fast, I think it's a lot like the whole grass-fed conversation around dairy.
Yeah.
which we have talked about a couple times on the show.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can go back and listen to what episode, specifically the one with Mark McAfee on raw milk. But it's the same. It seems to me like this is a very similar conversation to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So conventionally grown fish can be done in a variety of ways. Most of your fish that you're going to get in the grocery store comes from very large farms that are, they're either outside or they're inside. The inside operations look like fish in large plastic pools under fluorescent lights, and the water is recycled and oxygenated with liquid oxygen and aerators. And then the fish are given antibiotics because the conditions are so unhealthy that it's kind of like with meat chickens. It's like very similar, it's just so unhealthy that they need to kind of continuously put antibiotics in the water so that the fish will make it to term. Then you have like a different version, which is it's outside, but it's all in raceways, concrete raceways. And so the water is coming from the land. Like you can't grow trout without a spring. You can't. You have to have constant running water. You can recycle it to try to grow more fish, but that's what gives it that like fish tank taste or that muddy water taste. A lot of people say that trout tastes like mud, and that's where that comes from. But
it's from recycled water.
Recycled water, yeah. Okay. And so a lot of people will say our trout, the reason why it tastes so good is because the water is so clean, and it literally comes from like 200 feet away from where the fish are in ponds. So it's not like running down the side of a mountain and then going into a big stream and then coming onto our property. Like it's literally trickling down this little stream, and we catch it in a 16-inch main, and then it's redirected over to our ponds. So it's really right there. It's as pure as you're probably going to get. But like I was saying, then you have other conventional operations where the trout may be raised in concrete raceways. And so those fish are packed in there. Same concept. They're getting oxygen, sometimes liquid oxygen. They're getting antibiotics. The farmers will usually try to bleach the raceways just because there's so many different bacteria that tend to grow. That's their way of trying to manage the container that they're putting new fish in, so that the new fish wouldn't get sick. But it's like you asked about what does it mean to trout farm, or what is our way of trout farming? This kind of gets into the homesteading thing, but we all have idealistic visions of what it means to farm, and then suddenly problems happen. And you're just like, wait, crap. Like we did all this stuff so that a problem didn't happen, but now the problem did happen, and I don't want to do the conventional thing. So what do I do? And so for us, we've slowly, by reading older books and talking to a lot of other trout farmers, and also just doing some research, we've developed some ways to do things just differently than that. And our operation is really small, so we can do that. I think a lot of people don't understand that when you scale up, you are going to compromise on something,
right?
Yeah, and so for us, because we do low density in the ponds, that helps keep the fish not stressed so that they don't get diseased. And then it's not that our water is, doesn't have these bacterias in them. It's like the terrain theory. It's like if you're stressed, if your body's put under, the fish are similar. If they're stressed or they are in need of oxygen, they're more likely to get sick. So we do very low densities in our ponds. And then, for example, to clean our raceways, we use salt. To clean the water, we use salt, like farmer salt blocks. We'll run that under the water. Ty also has mentioned in some of our social media, we use iodine. That really helps, like if the fish get something. Early on, it's hard too. Like a lot of people with farming, there's just this vision that everything's perfect. Like the land is just perfect and the sky is perfect and the sun is perfect. So our animals are going to be perfect. And it's like, things happen, like the earth and the weather and your system is just, it's not perfect. Like it is an unnatural system. And so you have to take responsibility. A natural system is bison running across the land and like picking where they roam, and in farming and all types of farming, you're creating a system that you can best emulate nature and create a healthy, nourished animal that will live an amazing life so that you can eat it, and so that other people can eat it. And so, we're trying our best at that, but issues come up. Like early on, we were keeping the water too high because we thought, okay, we want the fish to have as much oxygen as possible, so we're going to keep the water higher in the pond. Well, we learned from other trout farmers that when you keep the water high, the sediment, their poop, and the dirt just from the water piles up on the bottom of the pond. And that's not really a problem until you get a huge gushing rainstorm. And then all this water flushes into the pond and it lifts all that silt off the bottom because now it's coursing water into the pond. And what happened is all of that silt and poop that was kind of just laying dormant came up and went into our fish's gills. And then it was like too much. And so that was a really huge learning experience for us. It was so hard to just see fish dying every day, and we just didn't know what was wrong. And so slowly we learned, about that. And that's something where we would use the salt or we would use the iodine. But now, preventatively, we keep all our ponds very low, so that the constant rush of water, and when the fish are feeding, they're agitating the water and they're kicking up any silt or poop on the bottom, and then the water just flushes it out every day, twice a day, so it stays really clean. So it's things like that where it's just stuff you don't think about that comes up, and then you learn as you go. I don't know if that answered your question.
This is fascinating. No, I think it's really interesting. Do you guys, so they swim in spring water. So I'm guessing the water's not filtered in any way.
No.
You guys don't do anything to filter it.
No. So, it was really interesting. When we first moved onto the property, we had a guy from Hollins who was like, oh, someone finally lives there. Hollins University. He came up and he was like, I've been wanting to take my students to this stream because this is one of the cleanest, best ecosystems in Virginia that we've ever come across. And it's just, it's balanced. And so the water is running over rocks, which is part of what cleanses it. It's going through vegetation, which is part of what cleanses it. But like I said, the artesian spring, it's coming out of like literally a rock in the mountain. And that's so close to our property that it just doesn't have very much time to get dirty. A lot of in Virginia, you have private water, so if you own the property that river touches or that stream touches, and you're a farmer and your cow dies and you could just dump him over in the woods, and then it kind of continues to rot into the stream, everyone downstream is getting that. And so even if the water looks super clean, there's a bunch of different stuff going on in there, and so we just have a really special situation with the cleanliness of our water. But when it comes into our house, it does go through like a UV filter and then a really actually not so fine silt filter. There's so much silt in it that we can't use a fine filter. So we just take in all the minerals and, enjoy the flavor of chocolate milk when it rains. So yeah, I know. I'm like, how can I keep my house clean? Every time it rains, I give my kids a bath in muddy water, but it's just at least it's like gone through the UV light. It's just part of it.
That's probably better for them anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we feeding these fish, right? Because they're not producing their own. There's not food in the water for them already, right?
So it's kind of like I love to equate it in a way to like chickens and pigs. So if you put a pig out, like a wild boar, it can survive if it's running all over the place and eating whatever it wants or whatever. And same with, well, maybe not the modern, but I guess a modern like laying hen,
A
it could
laying hen would be
survive.
okay.
Yeah, laying hen would be
A meat
okay.
chicken probably would
Yeah,
not.
no, probably just get eaten the first
Yeah,
night.
probably.
But it's kind of like that. So if we want the trout to grow in a certain amount of time, which is about 15 months, just for like a pound and a little
Oh
over
wow,
a
that's
pound.
longer.
It's
That's
very
longer than I was
long.
expecting.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
a whole cow. Yeah,
yeah,
it's almost a
and
whole
they're
cow.
small.
Yeah, but they don't have any waste. So, in farmer language, that's like amazing because a
Okay.
cow poops out of anyway. So it's pound for pound with the feed. But the other misconception about, feeding trout is that we would have organic feed, that people would be interested in even making that. And so that's an educating thing too, is just trying to educate people on the fact that no one has studied trout feed. No one is interested in doing well-raised farm fish. No one is interested in creating a feed, that is as clean as possible. So the one that we have is the absolute best that we can find. It comes from Canada, and it's mainly like fish byproduct, seafood byproduct. So a trout normally would eat bugs. And so it needs a lot of protein, like very, very, very high protein. And so when you smell the feed, it smells like seaweed. It doesn't smell like grain, kind of like when you like how nasty dog food is or something like that. Like it's nothing like that. It smells like seaweed. It smells like fish. Um, and it's really the best that we can find. And that has been really the second tenet in how wonderful our fish is that amazing feed. So it would, you can only go up from there with the feed, but we have found and we do buy the most expensive and the best quality feed we can find.
And you have to get it all the way from Canada.
Yeah. And pallets.
Wow. Well, I mean, you said something about beef liver. How did you even know to feed fish beef liver?
So this is crazy, but our property was built in the 1930s. So you have the hatchery building, it has the two teeny little raceways for the eggs, and then you have two larger concrete raceways for when the fish kind of get too big enough to fit in those little ones. And then right next to the hatchery building is the feed processing building. And what they fed the fish in the 1930s was roadkill. And that sounds
Uh,
crazy, but like in the 1930s, that's pretty amazing feed. Pretty amazing. And so so we knew a little bit like, okay, a fish can survive off of raw meat. Like that's amazing. But when he found this 1930s trout hatchery, little teeny book, it's like this big, off of eBay. The book said that the best quality feed that they found for a fish was beef liver. And of course, all of us know that that's like,
yeah, you were like,
the food of
absolutely.
all foods. So Ty's really proud, to be feeding them beef liver. But what we do is it's our cows, that we've had in the past, and it's frozen. And the best method that we found that works is we just grate frozen beef liver into the trough, and they love it. Like they just attack it.
So wait,
It's
are you like standing there with frozen,
mhm.
like you're
Yep,
making Christine's Bloody Mary thing?
yep.
Yes, raw liver time. I'm like totally picturing you with a microplane over the trough, just like, "Da, da, da,
Yeah,
doo."
no, that's it. That's literally it. Like it's so funny, farming is a collection of mundane tasks. Like that is farming. Really meaningful, emotional, mundane tasks. And so when they're really small like that, we have to feed them like many, many times a day. And that beef liver is so, I should say too that a couple of the farms that we learned from that are doing things more conventionally, just because they're so much larger than us, they don't, of course, they don't do that because they can't. I mean, there's just so many eggs and so many fish, and they only have so much manpower. And I mean, maybe if they got dehydrated liver, or something, but their success rate is really low when it comes to eggs. And so they buy a ton of eggs in, and their success rate might only be 30%.
Oh,
And when
wow.
I remember one of these guys, when they came and Ty told him that our success rate was 70%, he was like floored. And it for sure is the beef liver. Like it's 100% the beef liver. The feed in those first few months of life matters so much. Just like with our kids when they're small, like, or when they're in utero, like that really determines the life of the fish, the health of the fish. And so even though the fish isn't living that long, you want it to live its best life and be as healthy as possible and not have problems later on. And so the beef liver is key for us for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. That the difference between 30% and 70% is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
enormous.
Yeah.
Especially if that's your livelihood. That's
Mm-hmm.
just huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
What other animals do you have on your homestead?
So this past was it this past spring? Okay, sorry, my mind is like really having a hard time right now. Okay. Recently I sold everything. I used to it for 8 years I've had dairy cows. That was the first animal that I bought when I was pregnant with my first child. We've had dairy cows, we had sheep, we had laying hens. When we launched the trout business, we simultaneously launched a pork business. And that was insane. We had like 60 pigs on rented land, and they were just getting out. And we had
Oh
sows
my
and
gosh.
piglets and feeder pigs. And oh gosh, it was crazy. So
And you
we,
had little children.
yes. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Yeah. So we have done a lot of different things. But yeah, this past spring, I decided to sell everything. And that was like ripping my soul out. But it was a really life-changing decision for me, for sure. Yeah.
So you sold everything. Did you keep anything just for your family, or are you
So right now we're just growing like 60 meat chickens.
Mhm.
So that'll be for, the next couple months,
Year?
and then
Yeah,
we'll
that'll
butcher
last you
them.
a year, right?
Yeah. I have been contemplating um, doing a couple laying hens in the spring, but I am just done, and every homesteader will understand this. I am done doing things half-ass, if I can say that on the podcast. I just can't. So my limit for the laying hens is if I can get this coop built that I really want. It's a mobile coop that it's just the coop that I want. It's like fits everything that I want a coop to have. It has. So a friend of mine has agreed to build it for me, and if he can do that, then we'll get some laying hens. If he can't, then we won't. So yeah, that's what we'll have. Ever since we moved to Craig County and the hatchery, I have homesteaded on rented land. And, I know that's one of the things that people suggest to do or try to encourage people to do. But I will never, ever, ever do that again. Maybe if I had someone working for me, or I had some employees, or maybe if the land was directly connected to my land. But I was driving 15 minutes multiple times a day with all three of my kids when I was pregnant. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but
Oh, it definitely does.
oh my gosh. Like if you're just thinking the food, the water, the bathroom for the kids, it's hot outside, it's cold outside. And then they're fighting in the car. And then you forgot something. You get there and your fence is torn down and you don't have your tools to put it back up, or your animal is sick. And then, at one point, before I decided to sell, this crazy thing happened to me where I had a herd of ewes that I was so excited about, because that's like, besides dairy cows, that's like the thing that I want to do is sheep. I just love sheep. I just have a thing for sheep. And so I was so excited because I had these ewes that were all really gentle. My kids could get around them. We had this big, beautiful ram that was just so masculine and big and would throw great, babies. And I got sick this past spring, and actually all winter I was sick. It was very crazy. I was just like sick one after the other. That has not happened to me, like, I don't think ever in my life. I think it was just a stress max, where your body's like, dude, you're done, and you're not listening, and you just keep going. You're like, oh, this is weird, But what happened was I was kind of on the tail end of another sickness, and it was all respiratory and stuff. And all of my ewes started giving birth, and like half of them rejected their babies. And I'm like,
No.
dude, like, is this really happening right now? Because then I'm having to drive back and forth to the farm, or like 4 times 5. You really should be feeding a
Oh my
baby.
God.
So then you're like, okay, do I take this baby home and bottle feed it and then pay for formula? Because at the time my cows were dry. Or do I do I drive back and forth? And you really should be getting that baby to drink every 2 hours. So I'm stressing about that. I'm like, and you can't, it's important for a farmer to lay eyes on their livestock. Like, it's so important. And at night, every homesteader gets this, like, you're just laying awake, like with all the different things that you forgot, or all the problems, or that little hole in the barn that something could get in and kill everything. It's just so, I was handling this, like manhandling these ewes, trying to hold them down. And ewes can be, they can just be like, it's like manhandling a teenage boy. Like, it's just, what the heck? Where did all this strength come from? So I'm trying to get them to stand still so these poor babies can nurse, because they just don't, the life is going out of them. And so I was doing that multiple times a day, sick with all my kids. My one son's screaming because he's like afraid. He got hit by a ewe one time, so he's like afraid of, it's just so much going on. So
Oh my
anyway,
gosh.
overnight, I literally get mastitis, like overnight, like 104 fever. I
Oh
am
my God.
like, not, I was like, I mean, it was like sick, like all the things that are sick, if you know what I mean, is like all there. And if you've had mastitis, it feels like you're going to die. And I just felt like the Lord was speaking to me, like, you got to stop this. Like, this is just, you got to stop, And for me, it was just so hard. Like, I just felt like I healed through farming. Like, my heart healed, especially for my mom dying and all that I've learned about health and food, and, her having cancer, and just being involved in like what you believe in. And so it really, once I decided, like, okay, I'm just going to let it go, it became so apparent to me how much I was forcing it and how much it was affecting my family, and like we said, like, everything, something has to give, in every homesteading situation that you see online, that you see on Instagram, that you hear about, like, something has to give in that situation, whether it's like homeschooling, they send their kids to school, or whether it's, their meals. They eat out a lot, or they get cheap meals. Like, I have a really good friend who has an incredible raw dairy. Her kids eat from the dollar store. And it's just like, what do you want to compromise? And it's no judgment for anybody, but you've got to get to know yourself. And for me, like, and Ty, we had so many conversations. Like, we love to have a clean home. A lot of the homesteading friends that I have, like, that is on the back burner. And that's okay. Like, if that's you, that's okay. But for us, that's something that we wanted. And we wanted to have home cooked meals for all of our meals. We wanted to have a clean yard. Like, we didn't want just the chaos all around us. We wanted to still have like a pleasant place that was clean that our kids could play. So it's hard to be humble and figure out like, who really am I and what are like my priorities? Is staying home a priority for me, or is constantly running around tending to animals and pretty much neglecting the emotional needs of my kids? I mean, to be totally honest, like, that's what it was. I was pregnant, running a raw milk herd share, managing 60 pigs. We had just started our trout hatchery, and my nervous system was maxed. I was angry all the time. I was in so much physical pain from literally just milking, like just milking and lifting the milking buckets. Like, I thought there was something weird going on. And then the day I stopped milking, all the pain went away. Like, oh, I could have just done that like 3 months ago. So, and then there's just so many different, it's like when you have kids, like, you're constantly thinking about them. When you have animals and you have a farm, that's taking up so much emotional and mental space. And so and for me with homesteading, Ty, he was like the trout guy. He's like the provider, the trout guy, doing all the fish stuff, managing a whole business from the ground up. That is just like, we're on a learning curve that's like perpendicular, and then all the homesteading was for me. And so it's like, that's different than a lot of people. A lot of people, their husbands are equally involved, and their husbands might have a job out of the home, and then they have some income that's pretty stable, and then they can both kind of like take this venture on together. So it's different for every person. And, I really had to come to terms with like my situation and what God was having favor on in my life. And that was the trout, you know? And so it was hard. It was really hard for me to give it up, but it was good. It was good at the same time. My nervous system feels better.
It's such an incredible story, and I think that we might have some listeners that can definitely resonate with that. I don't know anything about homesteading. I'm a suburb girl, but obviously Corey does. It kind of
Yeah, but not to a scale.
yeah.
We're only doing it for our family,
But I love
and
that. I love
and
that.
my husband's very involved.
Yeah, but
Actually, he's like in charge.
that's one of the things I was just telling one of my friends. Like, people look on Instagram and their initial thought is, I want to make a living farming. And it's like, stop,
No,
full
you don't.
stop. Like, it's
No.
not even no, you don't. It's not even no, you don't. Like, maybe you do. But first start with like just your family. Like, just feed your family. See how much work that is. Just the 5, 2, 3, whatever people in your family. Feed them as much and as well as you possibly can. Figure out what you actually like to do. Like, do you like pigs? Do you like chickens? I don't like chickens at all. There are chicken people out there, and I know they're going to be like, but I can't stand chickens. I just don't like them, but I love sheep. I'm like middle ground on the pigs. And I could be with a dairy cow all the time. I don't like goats. There are people that love goats. They just want to do everything goats. I can't stand, will never have a goat. So, you got to figure out what you like. What are the families that are the priorities of your family? What's the lifestyle that you want to live? Do you want to travel? Do you want to be able to go away for a weekend? Do you have family that lives out of town that you have traditions with multiple times a year? Like, I have a friend who I've been wanting her to come visit, and she's like, Shannon, I just can't I have to stay here on the farm. And I'm like, you got to find someone. Like right now, you got to start finding someone to farm sit. Bring them in, train them, pay them whatever they will take, to farm sit for you so that you can have peace when you leave, And do you have a situation that is bulletproof? Like I've told some of my friends that are getting into homesteading, I'm like, there's no positive thinking in homesteading. There's no positive thinking in farming. There's no setting up a fence like, I don't think I think this will probably be good. It's like, if there's one weak spot in that fence, they're getting out. You get this, Corey. It's like, you cannot think positively. You have to be like all in, make that thing bulletproof, make sure there's more than enough water, because suddenly it's going to be like 105 degrees and they'll drink all the water in the first half of the day. And then,
and then they'll break the trough.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah. Like, what? What? Or let me tell you a story. We were at the trout hatchery. Okay. We had just moved there. I was determined to bring my dairy cow. Like, love of my life, my dairy cow. She's coming. I put her in this lower field that everyone in the area is like, oh, we've had cows there before, like blah, blah, blah. Lo and behold, it was literally, okay, so the neighbor bush hogged it later than he said he would. So he pretty much destroyed the fall grass, just like destroyed it. Lo and behold, it's literally full of mint. If you know anything about cows, mint is like deadly to cows. So I'm feeding her all this hay and she's just eating it all up and she looks so skinny. And I'm like, what is going on? She was eating the mint. So I am like, my cow, she went through 9 lives. When you're learning, it's like, you just got to ask 10,000 questions, take everyone's advice, do the best you can, and pray over your animals. But so anyway, long story short, we pulled her out of that field. And I was like, I'm never putting a cow in there again. Pull her out of the field, bring her up to our yard. Okay. The cops come. They're like, why do you have a cow in your yard? They're like pissed at me. Okay. That's a whole nother story. I'm like, why can't I have a cow in my yard? So anyway, have the cow in my yard. She's doing great, eating all the grass, getting good hay for her, getting her to recover. What had happened is she stopped drinking water because she ate mint. And cows can lose like 100 pounds overnight just from not drinking water. Like, that's how much of their weight is just water. Mm-hmm. So once I got her back going again, she was doing fine. I can't remember if she was pregnant or not. Anyway, we went away for literally like 2 or 3, I think it was like 2 days. And it was the first time we had been away in a really long time. And my brother, bless his heart, came and watched her. And another girl that I knew, I taught her to hand milk because I've always hand milked all my cows. So I taught her to hand milk. She was milking her out. My brother shows up and I had fenced off like almost all of our property because I'm like, I want to give her as much grass and room as she can possibly have because I don't know if my brother is going to have that feel for it of like how much food she needs. You know what I'm saying? Like, if she's doing okay, I just wanted to make sure she had extra. Well, the pond that was like maybe 6 inches deep. It was not a working pond. It was full of trees and shrubs and everything. That's in the middle of the property. There is a concrete raceway in the pond that's deep in the ground. It's like waist deep, maybe like bra line deep in the ground. I didn't even know it was there. She gets in the raceway.
Oh my gosh.
The water is 50 degrees. Oh, no. He comes and finds her. Why? Why? On the 2 days that I'm gone, I'm just like, but it's dairy cow. That's a dairy cow. That's a Jersey cow. Like, they're curious. They just get themselves into trouble. She got in the raceway. My brother, as resourceful as he is, built a like notched ladder for her on a plank of wood and led her out by halter. And I'm like, I don't even know how you did that. Because dairy cows are so clumsy. Like, she couldn't lift her leg. And the farm that we worked on in Oregon, There were stories where they had their dry cows out on the back of their property and their best cow died in a creek because she stood in there and couldn't get out because she's a lanky dairy cow. And she just went to the creek, decided she was going to walk right in, and it's just like you think, so no positive thinking. It's got to be bulletproof. It's got to be like the worst thing they could do. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. So, yeah, I mean, you live and you learn. It's a crazy life homesteading for sure.
Do you think you'll ever go back to it, like in a little while? Maybe when your kids are older or whatever?
Yeah, I don't see my life not doing it. I think right now we're waiting on land. Like, our land's kind of hard because of all the ponds. Like, we have 3 acres, but we have 7 ponds. And so that doesn't leave that much grass. The land isn't that great because it's all got shale underneath it. So the land all around us is owned by people that just live far away, but they hold, onto their land. That's kind of a common thing. And so it's really, we're just like praying for land. But I just know, like, there's limits now, there's standards now that I have. I'm not going to drive to Homestead. It needs to be directly next door. We live in like the crux of a mountain. And so there's one property, that we could potentially have. And if God doesn't give that to us, then I'll just do chickens. And, maybe one day I could have like a sheep or two. I don't know. But my heart is in like livestock, like herds of animals. Like, I love that. There's something magical about herding sheep. There's something magical about, 10 dairy cows coming in. There's just something beautiful about that. But I'll never do it alone again. I just can't. I can't shoulder all of it with 3 or 4 kids. So I said, if I had the funds to pay someone to partner with me, or if Eve got older and she was like, Mom, I really want to do this little farm business with rabbits or something, like, for sure, gung ho, gonna support her and do that with her. But I was just telling a friend, like, it just sucks because I feel like we're sold this idea of homesteading and farming, and it's sold to like these young parents like us who want to give everything to their kids. They want to give that outdoor life and the fresh food and being involved in the chores and stuff like that. But there's a really fine line to that. I mean, how many people do we know that were raised on a farm that hate it? They're like never going back. And, that's a real thing. And so you really just got to figure out like what works for you. And I think for me, definitely having my kids be a little bit older, like I'm about to have a baby, so I'm not going to try to build a chicken coop. I will trade someone fish or pay someone to build it for me. And if that doesn't work out, that's okay. We'll just do it the next year. But, yeah, I mean, I just realized that like I don't want to compromise the peace of my family. I don't want to compromise. I personally don't want to compromise home cooked meals. I don't want to compromise a tidy home that is peaceful and feels like a safe place. So it's just different for everyone, and everyone has different situations. And my situation could change. We could get more land, we could get more help. My kids will get older one day and hopefully want to do something along those lines. So all of those things are factors. But I mean, it's my love. It totally is my love. I would say writing and homesteading, they're like what I will do. But my midwife said to me today, she was like, you have such a short time with your kids. It's so unbelievably short. And you could homestead forever, like you could do that from when they are graduating high school till you're 65 or 70. Like, you really can. And she's so right. It's such a precious time where I know my limits now. And some people can handle a lot more. Some people can be super patient when everything's going crazy and shit hits the fan, but I don't have that muscle yet. I don't have that strong of a patience muscle yet. So, yeah, everyone's different, but yeah.
What an impactful story, honestly. And kudos to you for honestly doing the hard thing, giving it up. I feel like that is the hardest decision. So, wow. Hey mamas, do you want to add a new secret ingredient to your kitchen? Are you ready for this? Give Baja Gold sea salt a try today. We know our food is lacking minerals because of the depleted soil, so increase your mineral content of your food by using Baja Gold sea salt.
Baja Gold is an all natural, unrefined sea salt from the Sea of Cortez. This salt is made the way it used to be, sun dried with all of the ocean's minerals intact. No processing, no chemical flowing agents, nothing but pure, unrefined mineral salt.
Baja Gold is naturally lower in sodium and higher in minerals like magnesium and potassium.
Give Baja Gold a try today. Visit BajaGoldSaltCo.com to learn more. Check the show notes for the link and use the code MAM10 for 10% off.
Hey guys, 2025 is the year for you to take control of your family's health. The first step is getting in the kitchen and cleaning out your pantry and fridge. Get rid of all of the processed crap. I can help you with my Real Food, Real Families online course. In just 5 weeks, I will walk you through all of the steps so you can start creating healthy, delicious meals for your family on a regular basis.
Go to nourishthelittles.com and click on the drop down menu labeled courses. Then click on Real Food, Real Families, and we're going to put a link in the show notes for you to use. Then use that code MAM10, that's MAM 10, for 10% off this course.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel like sometimes when God like has a purpose in your life, he asks for that back. And for me, I just felt like one of our dreams is to have a farming internship. We want to do like a spiritual homesteading skills internship for people. And it's like we have a curriculum that's actually going to come out hopefully this year, early part of next year, that we've spent 8 years on writing. And it would be like an immersive 3-month internship. And it's a big dream, but I just felt like the Lord was like, I need to be able to trust you, that your identity isn't this. Because once farming supersedes like people, or like farming supersedes your peace, or farming supersedes your family, or it starts to break down. That's not the reason why you got into it in the first place. And so, yeah, it was really humbling. It was it was just scary for me, to kind of let that go. Cause I just felt like, this is who I am. Duh. I had so many friends say, wait, what? Wait, you sold everything? Like all of it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a mom now. And that's been a whole nother journey too, is just realizing like there's so much gold in being a mom and being a wife, and Mary Reddick talking about just the role of the femininity in a marriage. And for me, my goal is to be that woman of peace and joy, of joy and light, like for my husband who's out there working like a madman, providing for our family and building this amazing business. My work can be creating a peaceful home, a safe place, a resting place for him to come to, for my kids to kind of grow out of. So that's my vocation right now. I'm happy with it.
That's beautiful.
I know. I kind of feel like there's a few different directions we could take this in.
Okay.
Yeah, we're What do you want to talk about next, Corey?
Well, I have something that I actually really want to get to, but if you have something more along the lines of what she was just saying, then go on that.
No, I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I want to make sure that we ask the question about and I know this is like going way back to a midsection of the conversation,
Yeah.
but I think it's something that people need to know, um, who are trying to buy quality fish. So and I this feels really silly to ask this after that whole story and that whole
No, it's
declaration
okay.
because that was so beautiful.
I'm
It
glad
feels
we
almost
got to
like
it. I'm so glad we got to
silly.
it.
It seems almost a little silly to just talk about fish again. But
It is my life.
okay. All right. So I do want to ask, like, what are some questions that people should be asking or looking to find answers to from their fish farmers, from their fish sources? Like, what are some green flags? What are some red flags? How do we
Yeah.
find good fish?
So I was just thinking about this actually when you were talking about living on the East Coast and then having that fish and not really being happy with it, you know? And I think
This is just a me problem.
no,
This is
no,
not
no, no,
everybody
no,
on the
no. This
East
is what
Coast.
no, but I think I think you're hitting on something because I think a great question to ask is like, how long has this fish been out of water? I mean, just like that. You know, was this fish previously frozen? You know, where is this fish from? Um, you know, how do you preserve the fish? Like, there's just, how do I, okay, I'm thinking in homesteading terms. So, like, if you think about raw milk, okay, and you think about like what makes raw milk taste amazing, it's like cleanliness and then getting it cold really fast. So I think part of the reason why our fish tastes so great is because one, it's actually like extremely fresh. So like our chefs get the fish the next day. They were pulled out of the water. They go into one, they like literally sit on ice and then they get rinsed in water and then they get put in the bag. They don't go from like person to person or boat to boat or kind of surface to surface. Like it's very streamlined and I think that preserves like the freshness of the fish. So yeah, if I was at a fish market or if I was talking to a fishmonger, I would say, you know, how long have you had this? When did you get this in? Where is this from? How many different hands has it passed? Has it been frozen or is it fresh? And that's why I love though like Seatopia because they like in this um, world of seafood, we still know so little. Like I don't know anything about farmed oysters, you know, or I don't know anything about. So they're all so different. I mean, if you have a cow and you have 6 different breeds of cows, they're pretty. I mean, they're all cows, you know. It's just really the breed. So with seafood, there's so many different kinds of seafood and they all like trout need cold water, bass need warm water. You know, I mean there's so many different facets of how these things are grown and raised. And so it's amazing that you have something like Seatopia, which they've done all the research and they have sought out, you know, farms that meet a specific criteria and then are tested. So I think starting to do some research, like looking at their website, looking at the questions that they ask, looking at the things that they're interested in or the standards that they have is a good place to try to educate yourself, you know, on, it's like when my brother first started buying food from the farmer's market, he's like, well, do I just get the pork? Because it's there. And I'm like, well, ask them what the pork is fed, you know? And he's like, they said Purina. And I was like, okay, maybe don't buy that pork. You know? And I'm like, so he didn't know what questions to ask. So I love that you're asking that. But with trout, it's different than, every other type of seafood. You know what I'm saying? So I think
Right.
just learning, and even visiting some of these farms, like the oyster farm that canned our trout is called Island Creek Oysters. They have a great website. They do like a little canning box, a canned fish box of all these different types of fish from all these different places and these special sauces. And it's so cool, but they're into it, and you can go visit their farm. And so we can do that, just like you can go to Joel Salatin's farm or Sally's farm. So, yeah.
Super cool. Okay. I feel like this is something I know nothing about. And I'm guessing most of our listeners probably know nothing about it either. And, most of us would be like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the grocery store and just buy whatever says it's wild caught, Um, yeah, that.
And wasn't there, I feel like there was some documentary that came out recently too that exposed all of the labels and how they're all fake. And I mean,
About fish?
yeah, I thought it was about fish, but I could be wrong. I haven't seen it, so I'm just
I haven't
making
seen
this
that
up.
either. I would love to see that. I first learned about the situation in the oceans actually from Dan Barber's book 8 years ago, The Third Plate. And he has a whole section on the ocean. And just like Ty said in his podcast interview with Hilda, they are basically like raping the ocean, just like, they kind of burn the Amazon, or, cut and burn or whatever, the Amazon. It's just the term, it's been romanticized, the term wild caught. And, it's really interesting because I think, of course, a fish in the wild has so much opportunity and ability to get what it needs, in the best form possible. But what's really, really sad is two things. Like, one, our oceans like cannot be trusted anymore, and our shorelines especially. And then two, just like the handling of the fish, you don't, like I said, you don't know how long that fish was sitting on the boat. You don't know anything about the boat or the way that they like what that fish passed through, or, just kind of, I don't know how to put it, like how gross, their life was for that week before it got to the store or to your fishmonger, and, it's just one of those things where, um, I think sustainably caught is probably better than wild caught. But that's why there's only like one can on the shelf that's sustainably caught. You know what I'm saying? Um, and I love that the tin fish is coming out because it's a stable seafood option. But a lot of the tin fish people, they make it look cool and they put it all together, but the fish is not sourced well. And they're creating kind of some hype around something that's very low quality. And so even with the tin fish, just just looking into where are they actually getting the fish from? What are these farms? Most farms have a website, and if the farm has no pictures, that's a good indicator that they don't want to show you something. So with wild caught, they don't need to show you anything because there's been this whole story told to us, and so that it's completely like open game for whatever, So yeah, I think farm fish is the future, not, to be cliche, and not just because you can control the environment better in this world that's like so toxic, but also because like we need the population of fish in the ocean to come back. I mean, we are decimating the wild populations of fish. And it is like, it's really bad. It's really, really bad. And ocean life is like the root. I mean, that's like the beginning of it all. And so we really need to be careful about, fish is so good for you and it's important to have in our diet. But I think, it's like, what if everyone just hunted wild bird? The turkey would be gone. I mean, it would be gone. That's why the quail is gone, Virginia or whatever. So, it's one of those things where I think, I love what Mary said, like you just do your best with what you've got in that situation. But if you can make an educated or a choice that really reflects your values as a whole, finding clean farm fish is an amazing option.
Okay, so wait, you guys raise trout. So then what are the other farmed fish options? Do you know any other fish farmers in the country or in the, that are doing good work?
So that's where I would say to go to the Seatopia.
Right. Okay.
We are literally just finding out about other people. Like people are contacting Ty. But we have a lot of trout hatch. Well, not a lot. I would say there's like maybe 3 trout hatcheries around us, and they do a good job. They're not, their fish aren't inside under fluorescent lights in pools, but it's such a massive operation that they do use antibiotics and they do, use liquid oxygen, and their fish are pretty crowded. And when something comes up, they handle it differently. So, I think just like it's like voting with your dollar. If we can start to say, hey, we value this type of fish, we value this type of seafood. Because right now it's just like seafood. There's no even conversation about it, which is, I love that we're even talking about this. So, but yeah, and we weren't in that conversation before we ran a trout hatchery. But now we are, and it's the most important one for us. So, yeah.
I have to ask, do all of your kids eat the fish and do they like it?
Yes. Yes. They love it. I actually was so surprised with my littlest is like super picky. I think because I couldn't like control her every bite, being my third, So she kind of dominates what she wants. But if the fish shows up, she devours it. I think it's one of those things where kids just know. They know when they're tasting something nutritious, and especially with a trout that's fresh and then cooked with its skin on. And it's whole. So like just like you said with the bones, like all those juices are like soaking into the meat and going inside of it as it's like baking. It's just so satiating. My favorite is the back meat. It's like so fatty, or the meat by the tail. Ty loves like the cheek meat, things like that. But yeah, one time, this is a funny story. We butchered our own sheep, and my friend from the Middle East was like so excited to cook the head, because in the Middle East, that's like Easter dinner. That's like Christmas dinner. He like wanted to eat the eyeballs immediately. And we were just like, wow. So anyway, all the meat was so good off the head. And I said, well, what the heck? I'm going to give my son the brain and see what he does. Like I think he was like not even a year maybe. And I just put it in front of him, and he literally could not get enough of it. He couldn't get it in his mouth fast enough. And I mean, it's just pure fat, but it falls apart. So it's easy to eat. But I think the fish is kind of like that. Like once they start eating it, they're like, oh my gosh, especially if it's cooked right, where all those juices stay inside it, doesn't get dry. Oh, it's amazing.
Okay, so wait. So I think cooking fish is a difficult one for a lot of people. So so what is cooked right? Like what's your best way of cooking it?
That's so funny that you say that, Corey, because I've had a lot of people say that before, and all I can think is fish is the easiest thing to cook in the
Yeah,
world.
it
What's
is.
hard about fish? I
Okay.
don't
It's
know.
kind of like a whole chicken. Like people are afraid of a whole chicken, but it's like
A whole chicken is the
so
easiest thing to cook in the
easy.
world.
Fish is the same. It's the same, except it's so much shorter.
Yeah, it's fast. It's like a fast meal. Today,
Yes.
I made I did a coconut miso salmon curry in
Wow, you're
literally
cool.
20 minutes. Like, that was it. Like,
That's amazing.
start to finish. Like,
Wow. Can you write a cookbook?
no, no, no,
What
no.
I
I
do,
don't
what
wanna make
I do
money.
with the fish, my favorite thing to do with the fish is bake it. So you can do ghee or you can do olive oil or whatever, salt and pepper, the outside and the inside. And then you can squirt it. I like to squirt lemon juice on it after, but you could put some herbs in there if you wanted, or if you didn't. I love salt and pepper. Like, I'm a salt and pepper girl. I love the taste of things, not, in a like overdone with spices. I just love the thing. So I just cook it. It's like, I think Ty recently, he used to say 400 for 20 minutes, but I think some chefs told him to up the um, temperature. I think he does 450 for 10 minutes,
Wow.
and or maybe not even 10 minutes. And oh my gosh, it is so good. It is like, and you just squirt some lemon juice on it, you pull it off with your fork and you eat the skin, and it's like, I would say probably my favorite thing to eat is like pork roast, because there's so much fat and juices. You can tell, like, I
This is
love
how we
meat.
know she's
Oh, it's so
you're
good.
a Weston A. Price girl
It
I
saved my
all
know.
the
life.
way.
It's like, how can you not love this satiating food? So anyway, it's like that. Like, anything with like the juices and the fat that are just like cooked into the meat and it's all together, it's like a whole food. It's like the way it's supposed to be eaten. So, yes.
The way it's supposed to be eaten. I love that. Um, okay. What about so when you're like, how many times a week do you guys eat fish? Do you eat fish for breakfast? Do you eat fish for lunch? I'm like so curious.
Oh gosh, if we had the tin fish, so Ty is like trying to give everybody the tin fish because he's releasing it. I would eat that every day. I would eat that every day. But he's like, don't touch it. You keep eating all of it. I knew,
You can't.
So
What is that? Never mind. I'm not going to say it.
but yeah, we probably eat it once a week. Ty is very particular about fresh fish. So we process our fish on Mondays. And so we eat it then. Otherwise we would pull it out of the water and just bring it into the house. But yeah,
You just go out and catch one or two or whatever for
yeah, it's
dinner.
a little bit harder than it seems to catch a fish. So he's usually out there with the kids with like a fly rod to make it kind of fun, and then they bring it in and we'll cook it.
Oh wow. That's so cool. Yeah, I was gonna ask if they fished the fish.
Yeah, Ty grew up fly fishing. His family has fly fished for generations. And so that was really why we moved to the trout hatchery, just because he knew he liked fish. And it's so funny. Ty is, you have, maybe Corey, you relate to this, but usually have a person that's like livestock nurturer, in your homesteading farming. And then you have the person that's more like big picture, project oriented. And that's him. He's like big picture. I'm like, I could just feed the animals every day. So fish was really like his thing. It became his thing. Like, he cares so much for them, and loves them, and is always looking at them and watching them. And just, yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool to see. But yeah, we catch the fish on a fly rod to make it kind of fun. They're pretty good. The kids are pretty good. I'm proud of them.
That's so cool. Every time I see pictures or videos or stuff of what you guys are doing, it just looks so like beautiful and idyllic. And I know that maybe that's on his account, maybe that's on the official account, because
Well, isn't all
it's
of
just really
Instagram?
pretty.
Isn't all of
I
Instagram
know.
though? Yeah. I will say that that magical time of night in the evening, I feel on any farm, it doesn't matter where you are. It's going to be so beautiful. Like, whether you're standing out with your cows or your pigs or your fish, Those
I don't know. Where I live, the mosquitoes are awful at
Oh
that time of
gosh,
night. So
yeah, that would be hard. That would be really hard. But yeah, but yeah, Ty, it's hard, to find people that want to work for us. It's hard to, most of it is just mundane. You're cleaning and gutting fish, you're moving fish, you're catching them, you're feeding them. Um, it's not really like super hands on with the fish. So like that's one reason why I love livestock is like you can lay on your dairy cow. You can hold your sheep's face. There's like a physical connection there, and you don't really have that, with the fish.
you're not cuddling the fish.
No, yeah. I mean, my son probably would love to. If there's like a dead fish, he's always like, it's like 3 days old, had been laying out one that was forgotten.
Ugh.
And he's like, Mom, we need to eat this. We can't waste it. And I'm like,
Yeah, we can.
okay. It's just so sweet. He cares so much. But that's what I'm saying about homesteading and your personality. Like, what are you a vegetable person? Are you a orchard person? Are you a dairy cow person? Are you a fish person? There's room for everyone, but you really need to figure out like what you actually like. And he cares. I mean, he is a fish guy. He loves the fish.
That's super cool. What else do you have, Christine?
I was going to say, I think we need to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, Shannon, would you tell us where we can buy fish?
Definitely.
And where people can connect with you and with Ty and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So we do direct sale trout boxes on our website. There's kind of a collection of things that you can get and different options on our website for how many fish you want or what kind of fish you want. We also
Does that come like frozen or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So that will come frozen, and we also will sell our trout cakes off of that too. And then you can also buy a flat of our water. We just released a seltzer water of our spring water, which has been a huge hit. I was not expecting that, but it really does taste amazing. And if you know anything about like structured water and true mineralized water, like this water is running over the rocks. It is like the real deal. So it's slightly carbonated to make it kind of fun. It's a seltzer water. So you can buy a flat of that. That's 24 cans, or you can buy the tin fish on there. And there's, like I said, a bunch of different options, and we ship all over the place. And then there's a list on our website of like different stores and different restaurants that our fish is in, little boutique stores. There's so many, I can't remember the name of them all. So definitely look at that. And then if you're interested in like the Seatopia box, you can, I don't know if it just comes in the box of something that they kind of have like preset, or if you add it to the box. But Polyface also sells our fish, and White Oak Pastures sells our fish, and their farm stores and things like that. So yeah, it's a lot of places.
And the name of your website is?
smokeinchimneys.com. Yes. Ty and I are on Instagram. I'm the Trout Wife. He is Smoking Chimneys. So, yeah.
Okay.
I know. Yeah, perfect. Is there anything else you want our listeners to know about you or what you and Ty do?
I guess I would just say, like, being a realist, I'm not trying to be negative about homesteading. Like, I truly love it. It's like such a passion of mine. And I think it's really easy to compare, everybody's situations, because we have such lofty dreams, and there's we're sold kind of an idealistic picture, and then we just have such high standards for ourselves. Like this, it draws this type of person, So I would just say, like, you just have to be humble in your situation and figure it out so that you still have joy and peace, and you're like striving for the purpose that you originally wanted, for homesteading. It's a beautiful thing. It's like, it truly is so beautiful, but it can also totally destroy people. And so I think just getting connected with community, hearing other people's stories, asking difficult questions to other farmers, and just knowing when to give something up. If something isn't working, be okay to just give it up. If it's meant to be, it'll come back later in your life. So yeah, I want to encourage people that you just have to make it your own. Like, we live in a modern world where we're not homesteading with 20 of our family members, or even like 8 of our family members. We don't have 4 able-bodied men like next door to do all of the work with us. So, yeah, just be realistic and like pursue joy in it. And then you'll be successful. Or at least you'll find somebody else that's successful at that thing that you sucked at. And then you can just do the thing that you want
to do. Completely. All right. Well,
yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I want to say that too.
Yeah, this was a wonderful conversation. It was so interesting to hear everything that you guys have learned and gone through. And obviously, all the information we gleaned about farmed fish and trout farming specifically. It was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I think that's it. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.